Why do you think there has been so many different band lineup changes in Sabbath?
Heaven and Hell will always be my favorite album, favorite to make, favorite musically, and just because of the period of time that it was just so fulfilling, and I'm just sad that it ended when it did at that time. Not sad anymore.
With Ozzy off making his own music, Black Sabbath were in a bit of a tough spot. So upon recommendation of Sharon Arden, in a No Child Left Behind approach that's Sharon Osbourne, the band were introduced to the immortal Ronnie James Dio.
One thing led to another, and was invited into the studio that they were using. Tony said, well, I want to play something for you, and so they strapped on their instruments and they played me the beginning of what was a song called They Became Children of the Sea. Could you do anything with this? I said, sure, give me a few minutes and I'll see what I can do. Put something together. I sang the song, we did it. Tony at that point said, I want to play with this guy. And that was the very beginning of it all.
And although Don Arden was trying to get Ozzy back in the band themselves decided to give this new lineup a shot. And what we would receive in the interim would be a two-fisted volley of classic heavy metal, starting off with Heaven and Hell. 8 astonishing ass kickers that shifted Black Sabbath from an experimental bell-bottom bedecked band into a band worthy of the status they accrued. Ronnie James Dio injected so much fresh blood into the band, the royal family must have wondered who tipped them off. Every band member plays like there was a fire lit underneath them. Tony Iommi's riffs soar, and Geezer and Bill's rhythm is just tight as tight, man. I almost made a really dirty joke. And Ronnie... Look, people, it's Ronnie James Dio. Be him an elf, rainbow, or whatever, his voice will make your hair stand on end.
Lady Evil, evil, she's a mystical woman. Lady...
I would also like to acknowledge the 5th undercover member of Black Sabbath, late great keyboard extraordinaire Jeff Nichols, whose haunting keyboards and stellar songwriting would adorn this album and several albums down the road. People, I love Heaven and Hell, and surprisingly you all did too, as it quickly became one of Black Sabbath's most popular albums, and although the world loved it, someone didn't.
We're still holding on to the dead dream. It's dead. Sabbath are dead now. It's not that I don't like what they're doing. I mean, there's great music what they're doing, but it ain't Black Sabbath. It's not Black Sabbath. It's a new band. It's a different band. It doesn't sound remotely like Sabbath apart from Tony Iommi's thundering riffs.
Look, I love you, Ozzy, but turning down this album is like turning down a stark naked and oiled up Margot Robbie. But luckily Dio could dish it out just as well as he could take it.
I doubt very much that Ozzy could carry a tune if you put a radio in a suitcase and gave it to him in his hand. I think that if Black Sabbath had just gone away and died, Ozzy wouldn't nearly be enjoying the success he has now. Replying to them, to the things that Ozzy has said, to me is like dueling with an unarmed man. It really is.
Oh snap! Oh snap!
Look, it's not like I don't get where Ozzy's coming from. I myself personally used to be one of the biggest Ozzy or nothing tools on planet Earth, but even I couldn't deny that the Dio years were devastating. And if any other Ozzy fan folks came to this video to pinch a log on everything that wasn't sang by Ozzy Osbourne, 1, thank you for watching anyway. I may not like you, but I like your viewership. And 2, kindly dislodge your head from your ass and join me as we ride down this rabbit hole of ravenous metal. As for Heaven and Hell, look, if I keep jerking off over this thing, I'm gonna lose my boy. Next.
When we done Heaven and Hell, that was a distinct different writing mode for that, because Ronnie's a different sort of opposite singer to Ozzy altogether, and it required, where Ozzy would probably sing on a riff, Ronnie didn't so much. He wanted to sing on chords, so you'd do a riff and then go to a chord and he'd sing. So with Ozzy, it was the other way he'd sing on riffs, you know. So it was a different way of writing.
I should be at the table round, the servant of the crown, the king.
Oh sure, a band can kick out a key member and still craft a killer album, but could they keep it up? Losing Bill Ward because he really wasn't feeling the music the band was making, hell, he really wasn't feeling anything but the negative effects of rampant alcoholism, so he was gone. New drummer Vinny Appice would trial by fire the rest of the Heaven and Hell tour, and by 1981 we had Mob rules. Look, I gotta be honest with you here. I adore Mob Rules, but comparing it to Heaven and Hell, it does come off a bit weak. Key phrase is a bit. Sure, there's more filler on Mob Rules. I'm sorry, I really don't like Country Girl or Over and Over, but all the same, the standout tracks will stretch every hole on your body, from the epic sign of the Southern Cross to the vivacious voodoo. My favorite track, though, has got to be the sequel to Neon Nights, Turn Up the Night. Sabbath not only created a peerless classic, they gave it a worthy sequel. Dio-era Sabbath was poised to take the 80s by storm. And then they didn't, as when it came time to record the Live Evil album.
We were going the next day and what the hell's happened to the guitar and bass? And the engineer, Ronnie changed it all, he brought all the vocals up more. And
The engineer who was doing the product was drinking a lot. And he would tell Tony and Geezer that Vinny and I were going into the studio and turning up the drums and the vocals.
so he came next up with band Ronnie from the studio. Wouldn't let him come in, you see, and that's when that was the final straw. It just broke up.
And with that drama, Dio was done. Taking a Warner Brothers contract offered to him, he went to crafting his own catalog of killer metal. But that's a story for another day. As for Black Sabbath, well, they were shit out of luck and jolly well fucked once again, in the middle of their comeback no less. But it wouldn't be long before another iconic singer would grace the band's presence.
Black Sabbath is back together and back on tour, but with a brand new lineup. Tony Iommi, you were with the original group. Why don't you introduce everybody?
Okay, Ian Gillan. Good morning. Good evening.
Just gotta listen to the night and the ending of the day. Just gotta listen to the night as safely slips.
As if the Dio drama wasn't bad enough, Sharon Arden had recently become Sharon Osbourne, and Ozzy was looking to use her for more than just companionship. Breaking away from Don Arden's management to use his daughter, Don Arden was fucking furious, but then again, that was just how Don Arden was, so there really is no surprises there. Looking for revenge by any means necessary, he surveyed his surroundings and saw that Black Sabbath need a singer, and Deep Purple legend Ian Gillan needs a band. So, we'll smack them together, hotshot them to success, and that'll be a great big fuck you to my defiant daughter and her dopey husband. Now, Ian Gillan really wasn't feeling Sabbath and didn't want to join, but I guess all he needed was just a little push.
I went along to meet Tony and Geezer in a pub somewhere in the Midlands, and by the time we got thrown out, I found I was a member of Black Sabbath.
And with that, as well as reconvening with Bill Ward, we got Born Again. Yippee, is what the record-buying public said, and what I would have said prior to making this retrospective. But when I listened to it, it slowly dawned on me, as much as I didn't want it to, that Born Again is not as bad as I thought it was. Don't let one of the worst album covers of all time fool you. Born Again is not a full-blown abortion. The production job may be shot, but the songwriting isn't. Although I hate Trashed. The rest of the songs on this album range from good to great, actually. The only other weak link you could say is on this album, aside from the production, is Ian Gillan himself. I mean, listen to him on Deep Purple and this album. He shrieks like a banshee, but other than that, like, his vocals normally range from kick-ass to kick his ass out of the vocal booth. But like I said, the songs save this album. Keep It Warm, Digital Bitch, but my favorite is the song that Wasp turned into a career, Hotline. Born Again was a pleasant surprise for yours truly. Although it may not be the first thing I grab if I'm in need of some Sabbath, I will no longer pout when I hear it. Except Trash. That song is trash. But once again, Sabbath would fall apart. And no, not because of Stonehenge. Stonehenge? You mean that Stonehenge? Yep, that Stonehenge.
The dimensions that the management company had given were in feet, and the manager, by the time he did it in meters, so it was like 3 times bigger than what it was.
It was massive. And we're looking up at this thing going, bloody hell.
What are we going to do with this?
Stonehenge came down. It's 3 times bigger than the original Stonehenge. We had to hire the NEC for rehearsals. It's the only place where it would fit. And that, and that was without the stage.
No, Ian Gillan just left to rejoin Deep Purple, and the other band members left for their own personal reasons, leaving Tony Iommi the last man standing. And if you think that would stop him, you, my friend, are wrong.
But I wanted to break away and do a solo project under Tony Iommi, which I did, called the 7 Star album. But of course, as it went on, time went on, Black Sabbath was still supposed to have owed Warner Brothers another album, so they nabbed that one to become a Black Sabbath album.
With a mini Sabbath reunion at Live Aid and a completely new lineup at his back, including future Kiss drummer Eric Singer and one of my all-time favorite vocalists, the mighty Glenn Hughes, Tony went to work on what was either supposed to be a new Sabbath album or a solo project that was turned into a Sabbath album. Look, there are many contributing factors to both stories, but I'm not looking to get into any of them. Like they even matter, because the 7th star is 7 shades of super. Don't listen to the haters. They're just jealous they couldn't write an album this awesome. Oh, but Liam, it's too bluesy. Too bluesy. Too bluesy? It's Black fucking Sabbath. They started off as a blues band, and even when they shifted into more heavy territories, are we gonna just forget that songs like this exist?
Today is such a wicked thing. I ain't going on between the human race.
The soulfulness that you all piss your dundries about is this album's X factor. The blend of heavy riffs and soulful vocals is a combination that dreams are made of. Tony Iommi, being Tony Iommi, is great and all, but the MVP of this album is my main man Glenn Hughes, who rips into those vocals like they were the last set he would ever record, especially on my favorite track, Danger Zone.
Don't try to stop me, just leave me on my own. I'm gonna live or die.
I'd rather see Tom Cruise fly a fighter jet to this awesome song. 7th Star is a soulful shit disturber that talks its shit and lets its nuts hang. Too bad Glenn Hughes couldn't hang. Although he was as sober as he ever got during the 80s, which he says he doesn't remember, it wasn't until he got in a drunken fracas with, I believe a tour manager, that he got a big old punch in the nose that caked his throat in dried blood, and I don't think you guys are ready for how badly that affected his voice. Unable to talk, let alone sing, Hughes was out, and in his place, Badlands singer Ray Gillan. A great singer in his own right, but a controversial figure in the metal world.
And I was told that the reason they were given is because Ray was very sick, and in the end, he died of AIDS, and he infected some women, and it was as a concession to the families that were impacted by this. They were told those records won't be on shelves anymore.
But despite this, Ray Gillan did help the band avoid another implosion. Hell, he was even brought on to sing for the next album, demos of which are still on the internet. But Ray Gillan fucked off to another band, and Sabbath hooked up with the legendary Tony Martin. I hope you're all ready to bear witness to some of the best underrated metal you've ever heard.
Hello, the band's brand new singer, Mr. Tony Martin.
Watcha.
How you doing, guys?
All right.
Tony, let me begin by clarifying exactly who is in Black Sabbath at the moment, because the last time we heard from the band was the 7th Star album. There seemed to be... Well, to be honest with you, I got completely confused. I didn't know who was in the band in the end. Who's in the band?
You got confused.
Yeah.
This period of Black Sabbath is filled to the brim with albums that at the time you couldn't give to people for free on the streets, which is a shame because when Tony Martin lit up the mic, the music took an epic turn not seen since Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules, and The Eternal Idol is the first of those epic albums. And if you're thinking, that's a cool statue, what is that? It's actually a recreation of a famous statue. In fact, the paint was so toxic that both participants on the album cover were sent to the hospital. And while that does suck, oh boy, That's not the only thing that'll send you to the hospital. The Eternal Idol from the opening Stephen King Killer The Shining is a top-to-bottom, peerless record that had no business going unnoticed at the time. I mean, you show me a bad song on this album, and I'll laugh right in your face. I'd tickle this fucking album's naughty bits if it didn't get me on a list. Fucking Hard Life to Love, Lost Forever? I mean, come on, it's a killer album, but nothing turns my crank more than the 5-minute stomper, Ancient Warrior. The Eternal Idol has more killer riffs and catchy choruses than you can shake a stick at, but it flew under so many people's radars. Don't let it fly under yours. Due to poor sales, Warner Brothers would let go of Sabbath. After being convinced to join IRS Records, the boys would go back to craft something magical.
This man here is the master of the metal riff, just so as you all know, Mr. Irony, and, well, a great player who's always been a leader of the field, I think. In heavy metal, this man is, I think, the originator of it all. So, I mean, it's a great honour to come in and play for Sabbath. And I'm looking forward to this tour, because I think it's going to be the best lineup that Sabbath have ever had.
It definitely will, yeah.
With the addition of the late great Cozy Powell behind the drum kit and in the writer's room, in 1989 the band would release the immortal Headless Cross, considered by many a Sabbath fan as the magnum opus of the Tony Martin era. And while I humbly disagree, as you will soon see why, I do understand why a lot of people think that. It's a killer goddamn album. A dark, looming atmosphere abounds on this medieval monster. Lyrics that fit that atmosphere to a T. Tony Iommi's riffs slither, and no, not that shitty song from that shitty band. And Tony Martin, oh my dear good God, Tony Martin. Not only does he deliver one of the best vocal performances on a Sabbath album, he delivers one of the best vocal performances in the history of heavy metal. I'd trade all my guitar skills to sing songs like these. I mean, I'd trade them all just to sing Devil and Daughter. Another fun fact for y'all, that awesome solo in the middle of When Death Calls, that's not Tony Iommi. That's Brian May from Queen. Finally, a Sabbath Queen collaboration that doesn't suck ass. Headless Cross is a fantastic album that stands atop even some of the best Ozzy albums, proving to all deniers that even without Ozzy or Dio, Black Sabbath could still conjure the devil with merciless metal. Don't ignore Headless Cross. Cunt. Next.
Okay, what's your vibe on Tear, the new album, the finished product? What are your feelings on it?
How can I use that?
Yes. Your new album, are you happy with it? Obviously you must be, but what are you feeling?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
The Eternal Idol is epic. Headless Cross may render your head from its shoulders, but nothing turns me on quite as much as Tear. Replacing the Satanism with Norse mythology, you could also make the argument that maybe Sabbath helped popularize Viking metal as well. No, I'm just kidding. Bathory's Hammerheart beats it by at least a few months. But as much as I love Bathory, if more bands took a page out of Tear's playbook, I may be more inclined to listen to Viking metal. Heavy riffs cohabitating with mighty melody and songs that may be long, but they don't drag on for eons with little to nothing happening. I'm just in awe of how awesome this album is. As a huge power metal fan, how could I not be? I mean, it's just so... I mean, I could say that about any Tony Martin album, but especially Tear. Why wasn't this such a big success? Actually, no, I know exactly why this album wasn't a big success, and it's not just because the songs are epic, it's just how they were released. Look, it's bad optics to release a ballad as your first single, especially when that ballad is the weakest song off this album. But just because it's the weakest track doesn't mean it's bad, because I will repeat this until your grandma loses the rest of her hearing. There are no, I repeat, no bad songs on Tear. You got killers like Anno Mundi, The Lawmaker, The Sabbath Stones, Jerusalem, the 3-part epic battle of Tear owns Court and Valhalla. It's just, ow, ooh, sorry. I'm giving myself a migraine by being too amazed. Okay, it's gone. But you see where I'm coming from. To pick a best track would be a disservice to all the rest of the awesome material on this album. I'm just glad I'm no longer the Sabbath fan I was, and I actually listened to this album instead of ignoring it. But it's the year 1990, and that's exactly what people were doing. But under our noses, a reunion was a-brewing.
Maybe our success or our attitude about how important we were was maybe perhaps a little bit wrong. Proves now again that the strength was always in the numbers. The strength was in the fact that we did what we did together.
The return of the Mob Rules lineup. If only the resulting album was as cool as that fact. Despite what that opening clip of Dio may suggest, the band were really not feeling this reunion.
We went to the States to do some rehearsals, and it didn't particularly gel the first couple of months. The chemistry wasn't quite right, for whatever reason.
Again, the communication problem came up again. We didn't really communicate. So when any problems did come up, and it was a matter of people hiding behind doors and hearing it from other people, this is wrong, that's a problem.
With Dio even outright refusing to reveal his vocal melodies, resulting in several rewrites of the tracks they were working on, it wasn't long until Iommi got furious and rang up Tony Martin to come and sing on the tracks. That's weird, he thought. I thought I was still in Black Sabbath and we were cutting demos for this album.
But the first time they did that was a big shock, because I was actually walking out the door to go to rehearsals when the first time that happened, and nobody told me, so I was like, oh, you know, couldn't they have just sort of called me up or something, you know, and sort of said something about it?
But hey, if you need me that bad, I'll come in and sing on it. Click. And then the record company found out about this, those Tony Martin songs were scrapped, and Dio's hand was forced. And after all that, we finally get to the finished product, Dehumanizer, a science fiction romp of gargantuan proportions. And, oh man, it pains me to say this, it's just not that good. Now, I don't want to use those words for any Dio-fronted project, but it just isn't. It's the weakest out of the Dio bunch by far, and that includes Heaven and Hell. The band, not the album. But to say this album's all bad would be a disservice to the tracks that kill, like TV Crimes, Computer God, and No Word of a Lie. One of my all-time favorite Black Sabbath songs resides on this album, The Immortal I. But if you're looking for a science fiction Dio album to rock out to, I'd recommend listening to Angry Machines, one of Dio's most underrated albums. But once again, that's a story for another day. Dehumanizer. It's an album, all right. While the band would tour this album, it wouldn't be long until problems arose once again when the offer to open for Ozzy Osbourne on his No More Tours tour came up.
I especially gave up too much of what I had with the Dio band to suddenly be relegated to being the opening act for the ex-lead singer, again, who had nothing but bad things to say, certainly about me, but about Tony as well, and Geezer. So, just wasn't in the cards. I wasn't going to be on the same stage with the man.
While I completely understand why Dio didn't want to open for Ozzy, as Ozzy spared no expense pinching logs on him, it did put Sabbath in another sticky situation. They tried calling up Tony Martin to come fill in, but he was threatened with prison time if he showed up. I don't know, which resulted in Rob Halford of previous Retrospective Judas Priest to come sing for the shows, and for the sake of your ears, I will refrain from showing any footage. After that concluded, third times was the charm, and Tony Martin was brought back into the fray with new drummer Bobby Rondinelli for the next Sabbath album.
I think we've gone as far as we could go with that lineup. It took like 2 years, over a period of 2 years, to do that last album with him. So what we've got now is the best thing we've got. You know, it's easy to, we can work. We've got a great relationship, and music comes easy. You know, it wasn't coming that easy with Ronnie.
With a well-needed break from Dio's drama as well as another failed Ozzy reunion, Tony Martin would return to the fray and songwriting would commence once more, apparently way smoother than Dehumanizer, even though both albums were being written at the exact same time. Hell, even the king, Eddie Van Halen himself, got in on the action, and that album would come out under the moniker Cross Purposes. Now we're talking. This is a way better album than Dehumanizer, even though it's not the best Tony Martin album, but it's still a Tony Martin album, so it fucking rocks. I mean, you got songs like Eyewitness, Cross of Thorns, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. I mean, awesome material abounds on this badass record, but at the same time, you got some stinkers on it, like the ballad Dying for Love, and rest in peace, Eddie Van Halen. His song Evil Eye, sorry.
People say the woman's gotta live on.
But even with a few chewy bits, Cross Purposes is still a meaty morsel of metallic proportions. Soundgarden's Super Unknown is a better Black Sabbath album. Kiss my pimply white butt cheeks. Recording another live album, Geezer Butler would amble on down the dusty old trail to form his Geezer band, GZR, I don't know how you pronounce that, and throw some shade at Tony Iommi, even though he really didn't care. Getting the tier lineup back for his band, it was time to record another album. Whew. Now, up to this point, I've been praising Tony Martin Sabbath, like, really hard, but every band has a redheaded stepchild in its midst, and oh boy, this one's a doozy.
So you're glad to be back, Cozy?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the situation before, unfortunately, I had a bad accident where the horse fell on top of me, and that put me out of action for about 6 months. And obviously things moved on. Tony got together with Geezer and Ronnie again. I worked with Brian May in the meantime, and then Brian's tour finished, and we were sort of doing some recording, and then Tony phoned up and said, would you like to come back and do the next album? So here I am.
Considered by many fans to be the absolute worst Black Sabbath album while completely forgetting Technical Ecstasy exists, 1995's Forbidden, in my eyes at least, isn't all that bad. But I'm not bidding this fucking thing for a crown. Whoever decided that Black Sabbath should record a rap metal song should be shot on sight. And what's that song, Can't Get Close Enough, where it's like, so many tears, yeah, that song? Blech. But as I was listening to this thing front to back, I came across killer tracks like the title track and Get a Grip, and I honestly thought aloud, is this album really all that bad?
Blessings in life I'm given. These things ain't for you and me. Every time you shout forbidden, makes me wonder what you...
Okay, yes. For the most part, Forbidden is a steaming pile of stinky, but that's what you get when you record an album to fulfill a contractual obligation. And we all know what happened after that obligation was filled. After a decades-long will they, won't they, the original Black Sabbath lineup reunited and took the late 90s by the Scuchiles, giving Tony Martin the old Sabbath-style sacking. Trust me, it's going to continue into the future. And then they just kept touring and touring and touring. I bet eventually this new album they're coming out with is going to be killer, right? Right?
The magic was about the spark was with each other, and you know, we just sort of like our destiny to go and do this album, and everything just fell into place.
Safeguard my philosophy until my dying breath.
The 18-year-long gap between studio albums was a wasteland of failed recordings. Apparently tracks were solid for a 2001 release by Sabbath, but Ozzy fucked off to his solo career, Geezer went off to his, and Tony Iommi, the Riff Master General, went on a goddamn tear of stellar solo albums with stellar singers minus Billy Corgan, but the most stellar of them all was my main man, Glenn goddamn Hughes. With him, he released 2 Iommi albums, the 1996 DEP Sessions and Fused, both of which kill.
I don't mind, and I don't regret, and I wanted you to know.
Tony and Geezer also linked up with Ronnie James Dio and Vinny Appice to record The Devil You Know. And if you want to know more about that album, I'd recommend watching my Heaven and Hell retrospective. But now it's time to record another Black Sabbath album, and in 2013, 13 hit store shelves. Now, there's no middle ground on this album. You either love it or you hate it, and the reasons for both are all due to Rick Rubin. While he did bring the band back to basics,
I think he's looking for a raw Sabbath, and I think we're looking for that as well.
He sat us all down and put on the very first album that we made, and he said, forget everything else you've ever learned.
go back to this.
He did so at the expense of a decent production job. But this is Rick Rubin, the man who mixed Metallica's Death Magnetic, an album that sounds better on Guitar Hero. Are there good tracks on 13? Of course there are. You got God Is Dead, Zeitgeist, and my personal favorite track, Methademic. Apart from those tracks, really the only negative thing you can say about 13 is that the majority of its material is just really mediocre. Well, that and the fact that Bill Ward isn't behind the kit. Look, there's a multitude of reasons as to why sacking Bill Ward was a bullshit move, and it was. But at the end of the day, it's all for naught. As in 2017, the band ended their career on a whimper with a mediocre album and a tour that, while I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, would have been cooler if Bill was behind the drum kit. But let's not let that take away from Black Sabbath, the granddaddies of heavy metal and one of my all-time favorite bands. Well, that tears it for Season 2 of the Retrospective. It was a bumpy ride, I admit, but at the end of the day, it was all worth it. I hope to see you all again in future videos and a future season. Until then, I'm Liam Winfield. Keep on rocking.
What about the audiences that come to see your groups? Are you concerned about their hearing? Are you I mean, these are young kids. They have lots of things to do. They have long lives ahead of them, and they won't be able to hear anything.
Well, we have the same problem as that.
You have, pardon?